Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Gabby Gayaga here. Sorry I've been a little MIA. It's been a while since I recorded my last video and just a lot of things have happened within the last few weeks, and I want to thank all of you for watching my videos, and I want to thank you guys. I want to thank each and every one of you for the support, for continuing to watch my videos, and I want to thank my new subscribers. Thank you guys so much for the support. You guys have no idea what this means to me. I just want to take that time to thank each and one of you. I appreciate all of you for liking my videos, commenting on my videos, and subscribing. It helps me a lot. Thank you so much for that. So this video is not like my typical videos. This video is going to talk about my experience with COVID. I am a healthcare worker and I caught COVID. Hopefully this video helps you guys. This video is not meant to diagnose anyone. This video is not meant to make you guys freak out or panic for any symptoms at any point that you tend to feel. It's just mostly for educational purposes and to share my experience with my viewers, mainly to help you guys understand what it's like going through COVID. Everyone goes through COVID differently. I don't want you thinking automatically you have COVID. Obviously, the right thing to do is to go get tested for it. That's the only way you would know for sure. Hopefully this video just brings awareness and just gives you guys a little insight as to what it's like going through COVID, and especially being a healthcare worker. For a while I have been depressed. I have been in a rut. I've been very sluggish. This is actually the first time in a very long time that I've done my hair, done my makeup, and just done something outside of just just sitting there thinking and worrying. Moments like those hit you hard. They make you open your eyes and realize what it is that you really have in your life. And it helps you learn to appreciate things a little more. It helps you realize how much you have taken things for granted. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name again is Gabby Gayaga. Feel free to click the subscribe button, click the notification bell so that way you are notified when my next videos come out. And feel free to give this video a like if you feel like it has been informative, or if you just enjoyed watching it. So I was at work on a Thursday. This was the 17th, December 17th, and I started to feel a little bit of a sore throat. It wasn't something that made me uncomfortable, so I hardly noticed it. I just felt a little bit of a sore throat, and I thought it felt more like when you yell and it feels kind of like, just a little sore. And I was just so busy with work that I didn't even notice what I was feeling. But even then, I'm like, okay, well, it's just a little sore throat. It doesn't really mean anything. It could just, be the cold air, what have you. It is December, so chances are it's just the cold air that affected me. But then I got a text from my husband saying that he tested positive for COVID. I immediately had to stop what I was doing, and I had to go to my manager and notify her. So because my husband tested positive for COVID, I had to go home. I had to go get tested myself, and I had to be off of work for 7 days automatically. Whether my test was positive or negative, I had to be in isolation. So I panicked. The statistics I've been hearing is that over 97% of the population that is infected with COVID recovers from COVID. So I was not, during the entire pandemic, it did not freak me out per se. I did not feel threatened. I felt like I was taking the proper precaution. At work, we took our proper PPE, so we wore our masks, we had our goggles or face shield, we used hand sanitizer all the time, constantly washing our hands, did not touch our face, did not, we took all the proper precaution at work. Especially being a healthcare worker, you are looking for your safety, you're looking for your patient safety and your co-worker safety. So you want to make sure that you do follow all these standards as much as possible, because you don't want to create cross-contamination and later on find out that someone did get infected from COVID because you were not careful enough. So I did not want to have that responsibility on me, knowing that I caught COVID and I passed it on to someone. And because even though the statistics say that there's a high rate of people recovering from COVID, there's still a small percentage of people that are considered high risk and are dying from COVID. So I did not want to be that person that would cause death onto someone just because I was being careless. So I was confident that I was doing the right thing. So when I found out that my husband had tested positive for COVID, he was explained to me that he tested because he started to feel some mild symptoms, a sore throat. He started to feel like cold flu-like symptoms, when you feel kind of weak and kind of like off. So his employer told him to go get tested. So here in Southern California, everything is full. We are highly impacted by COVID at this moment, and there was no location that we were able to test for COVID. He tried to test through Kaiser. He tried to test through other locations like CVS, Walgreens, etc. No one had any openings. It was everything was appointment based only. So it made it really difficult. So he was able to find a rapid test site. He did pay out of his pocket, which was $109 or something like that. And he was able to get his results within 15 minutes. And that's how he was able to notify me. So after I notified my manager, I did have to call Human Resources. They had to triage me and they had to send me home, and I had to quarantine for 7 days. They wanted me to retest within a few days after, just to make sure that I did not have COVID and I could return to work after my 7 days were over. But that's when things started to spiral out of control. I went home on Thursday. Friday I was home. I didn't have any other symptoms. The sore throat had gone away. It had subsided, and I had to watch over my little ones. So I was feeding them and just basically watching over them while my husband was quarantined. He stayed in one room, and we were able to take his meals, leave him outside the door, and he would pick up his meals and eat in his room and do whatever he had to do. He had a private restroom in his room, so he did not have to share any other restrooms with anyone else. So he was able to quarantine on his own the entire time. This was Friday. Saturday, this is where the nightmare began. My mom spent the night over our house, and because we wanted to play it safe, and we thought I should be isolated as well, just to be on the safe side so I don't spread the virus onto our children. I isolated myself. And Saturday, my oldest daughter woke up unresponsive. She was not reacting to anything, and my mom carried her into my room and told me that she wasn't responding. I panicked and I knocked on my husband's door and I said, I need your help. She's not responding. I took her downstairs. I poured cold water on her face to help her kind of like snap out of it, because my first instinct was, oh, she's probably sleepwalking or something. But at that point, she stopped breathing and her lips turned blue, and I started to perform CPR on her. The hardest part is being a parent and seeing your 4-year-old in front of you not breathing. That's hard. And I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what all these news reporters and the media say about COVID not affecting children. I can tell you firsthand that it does. And it can affect people in different ways because COVID is still new. So these should not be talking like they know the answers to everything, because even they are trying to determine and learn from it, because it's still a new virus. It's a situation that we've never been in. Luckily, I'm CPR certified and I perform CPR on my 4-year-old daughter. My husband's in the background calling 911, talking to the dispatcher. Paramedics arrive. At that point, she started to kind of come back. She was now breathing, but she broke into a seizure. Paramedics assessed her. They took her sugar levels, they took her temperature, and they took her to the nearest hospital. They were hesitant in having me ride with her because they were not sure if I was positive for COVID myself. Even though I had tested the day before and it was negative, they were still hesitant. But given the fact that my daughter had just had a seizure and had stopped breathing, and she's only 4 years old, I had to go in that ambulance with her. Heading to the hospital, it was overcrowded. It was so overcrowded. Luckily, they were able to assess her immediately. She had just woken up from whatever it was that happened to her. So she wasn't aware of her surroundings. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know what was happening. She just saw these people shoving things down her nose to test her for COVID, and poking her arm because they needed blood samples, and she was putting up a fight. And it broke my heart seeing her crying and scared. And I couldn't do anything to help her. Instead, I had to be part of the staff to hold her down because I wanted answers. I wanted to know what happened to her. Her temperature was really low. They took a rectal temperature and it was very low. And they gave her antibiotics because they weren't sure if she had meningitis, so they thought if they'd play it safe. And then they told me that she was positive for COVID. So they had to transfer her over to the Children's Hospital. They did x-rays on her. They did all the checkups that they possibly could just to make sure she was okay. Within 3 hours of being at the hospital, she developed a fever. And luckily they couldn't find anything else besides the fact that she tested positive for COVID. They said it could have been a febrile seizure that she had, but they weren't sure, so I had to follow up with a neurologist. When we came home, we were isolated ourselves, her and I in one room, my mom and my other daughter in another room, and my husband in another room. And all night for 3 days straight, my daughter had a fever, and I struggled to bring it down. I was extremely afraid to have her go through the same thing again. I did not want her to have another seizure, or I didn't want to fall asleep and wake up to her not breathing. So I was sleep deprived, and at that point I really felt the COVID symptoms. At that point I was flushed with everything. I started to get headaches. I started to get body aches. I had runny nose. I started coughing every night. For some reason, only at nighttime, I started coughing. And it was a very persistent cough. And I couldn't sleep. Even after she recovered, after the third day, she no longer had a fever. And she was back to her normal self, which made me very happy. She was jumping, she was playing. Being the wonderful little 4-year-old that she is, she understood the situation. She knew we had to stay quarantined, and not once did she cry to leave the room. Now, I was really sick, and the entire time that I was quarantined with her in the room, I wore a mask. I slept with the mask. I had that mask literally 24/7. And I was just afraid, because when I spoke to a doctor, the doctor said to be careful because we can recontaminate each other. We can all be reinfected. So I did not want to reinfect her. So I made sure I had a mask the whole time, and I used hand sanitizer, and she's a 4-year-old, so the good thing is that she's very independent. So I didn't have to do things for her, like change a diaper, feed her, stuff like that. So my mom would bring us our meals, and she would able to, eat on her own. But if I can't say that I personally had a specific timeline of how my symptoms occurred, because they were all over the place. I literally had the works. Every symptom that has been reported, I literally felt. And I felt it to a very extreme level. The good thing that I'm so thankful for was that I did not have severe breathing problems to where I needed to be hospitalized, but I did have, everything was so intense. Like, when you are sick with the flu or the cold, you'll have a headache, but this was not, it was as persistent as a migraine, but it did not feel like a migraine. It was just a very painful headache. I had lost my sense of taste and smell that lasted 2 weeks. I suffer from osteoarthritis, so the inflammation was affecting my joints and my ligaments. And for some people, like, they find it kind of weird when they hear that, but it just as weird as it sounds, that's how weird it felt. I literally would lay down flat, and I would feel like I was doing the splits. I could feel my ligaments pulling on my legs, on my back, like literally everywhere. And I did not understand why. I tried to go into fetal position to see if that would help. That only made it worse. I tried to just, lay on my stomach. That didn't help. And I didn't know what to do. I took Tylenol extra strength as the doctor recommended, and it helped for a little bit, but then it would come back. I felt congested. It felt like I couldn't breathe. You would inhale and your lungs felt tiny. Like you could only take a certain amount of air in, which is, it's hard to explain. It felt like a pressure. It felt like almost like someone was sitting on your chest, but you were still able to breathe in. However, you were only limited to how much you can take in. For 2 nights, I woke up feeling I felt confused. And I know that my doctor said that if at any point I feel one of the severe symptoms, I guess they would call them, if I've ever felt confusion to go to the hospital. But I didn't want to go to the hospital because after taking my daughter to the hospital and seeing how highly impacted they were, I mean, people were still on gurneys in the hallway, on the ground. Like, there were so many, people were outnumbered. The staff was outnumbered. They had no beds available. They were just trying to get people in and out, in and out, in and out. Like, it was insane. When we were trying to leave the hospital, like, we were, have you guys seen the movie The Little Mermaid? And do you guys remember seeing that scene where Ariel is going through that tunnel to get to Ursula, and all these like worm like people are coming out from the walls and they're trying to reach out for her? That is exactly what it felt like. We were literally trying to go through the hallway, trying to exit the hospital to go into the ambulance to transport her to the children's hospital, and there were people in the hallway reaching out for the gurney, reaching out for our legs. I was just, it was very traumatizing for my child and for myself, and I did not want to go, especially if I was just having confusion. So it was just, I was hallucinating. Like, I was so delusional. I would wake up in the middle of the night, like because of COVID, I mean, not just because of COVID, but when you're sick, you have to consume a lot of fluids. So I was drinking a lot of fluids, but for the most part, my bladder is able to stay full and I'm able to hold it all night till morning. But for some reason with COVID, I just couldn't. I had to keep going to the restroom, and I would wake up in the middle of the night to walk to the restroom, and I would feel, or I would think, I'm on the freeway. I literally woke up thinking that I'm walking from my room to the restroom and I was walking through the freeway. I felt like the hallway was the highway. Like, it was insane. Like, my mentality was just somewhere else, and I felt like I had to go downstairs for more water because I felt thirsty, but I knew I wasn't like mentally all there to do so. So I just decided to go back to bed right after that. And I just have to keep taking Tylenol after Tylenol. Like, I don't even know how long I had to take Tylenol for. And so I tested again for COVID on the 22nd, and that came back positive. So it was just shortly before that day that I started to feel the symptoms get stronger. After that, it was just everything that I had felt. There were times where I felt hot flashes. Like, I could just be sitting down and I would get like cold sweats, like my hands would get very sweaty and I would be so cold. I would get chills, and then just like that, I would have hot flashes. I would start sweating. I felt like internally hot. Like, it was so strange. I've never had hot flashes in my life, and this was so weird. I had episodes of extreme nausea to where I really wanted to throw up, but because I was taking medication, I did not want to have to lose the effect of the medication. So I tried my very best not to throw up, and I just laid there and I tried to have it subside. So I would try these breathing techniques, but I would breathe in through my nose, breathe out through my mouth. But given the fact that I was wearing a mask, it made it really hard to do so. So I didn't know what to do. I just had to like kind of, let it subside, and I lost my appetite. I just did not want to eat because A, I didn't want to throw up, B, I was very nauseous, and C, I had lost my sense of taste. So when you don't have taste, you kind of don't crave food anyway, and especially when you're nauseous, you really want to stay away from food. So there were days where I would only have one meal a day, and it wasn't like a nice full meal. It was like maybe like a snack, like sometimes I didn't even want to, like, sometimes I would just have like fruit or what have you. And even then it still made me nauseous. And then I was just tired all the time. So when I was supposed to go back to work, I had to contact Human Resources, and they triaged me to where they asked me questions based on my symptoms and what I was feeling, and they didn't clear me to go back. They extended my time off, and they had me follow up with my doctor. So every day I would message my doctor and I would say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm experiencing, can I go back to work? And she would say, no, you cannot, because you cannot work in those conditions. And so eventually it got to the point where like the nightmare wasn't over. I think for me, what had affected us as a family was that we were separated. We didn't see each other. We FaceTimed each other, but it's not the same when you FaceTime someone versus being able to hug them and have, be around them and enjoy their company. So we had 2 dogs. We had we had 2 Chihuahuas. One was a 10-year-old Chihuahua named Cherry, and she was a tiny little thing, 2 pounds. And we have Bubble, who's a Chihuahua Pomeranian mix, and he's probably like 10-13 pounds, so he's a little bulkier. So every single day we had a routine of sitting down and feeding our dogs. So we would hand feed them. Not so much for Bubble, but so much for Cherry, because since she was so tiny, she suffered severe separation anxiety. So the only way she would eat is we would hand feed her. And eventually it got to the point where she would only want to be hand fed by my husband. So given the fact that my husband was sick first before any of us, there were days where he just couldn't feed them, and I tried to feed them, and they ate very little. So he began to feed them again. This is also where another of the hardest parts come in, because we were told to stay away from our pets if we were positive for COVID, but because they needed to eat to survive, we had to feed them in order for them to survive. So Bubble got sick, most likely from COVID, because they're not outside dogs. They don't go outside. They're indoors all the time. We have a backyard, so if they need to use the restroom, they just go to the backyard and they come back inside. And I read online that it affects their respiratory as well as their gastrointestinal organs. So Bubble had diarrhea for about 2-3 days, diarrhea and vomiting. So we had to constantly clean after him because we were afraid that my other little one who wasn't sick would get sick, because she would crawl around the same areas he was around. So we're constantly disinfecting the areas. Now, because Bubble started, I'm assuming either Bubble was drinking out of Cherry's water bowl, or just the fact that they were around each other, he probably passed it on to Cherry. She ended up going through the same symptoms. She lost her appetite. She did not want to eat. She started throwing up. She started having diarrhea, but she started pooping blood. And she was a very fragile little dog. We had to make sure we kept her sugar levels within range. So if there were days where she would not eat, we had to rub honey on her gums to kind of keep her sugar levels where they needed to be, so she wouldn't like have a seizure or anything, because that has happened in the past. And everything is just so impacted by COVID, because my husband told me, I don't think she's gonna make it. I panicked and I went into the room, and she's very cold. She was like icy cold. And I got a bunch. I got an iron, and I took I had a bunch of rags, and I started ironing them, and I started just overlapping them on her just to keep her warm. I'm calling vets, emergency animal hospitals. No one could take me because everyone was full. And I said, you know what? I'm just gonna risk it. I'm just gonna drive up to one and see what happens. And I went to one, and they assessed her, and they said, right now we're only taking urgent cases. She seems fine. If she starts breathing, heavily, bring her back, or bring her at 6 a.m. when the nursing shift changes. And I'm thinking, wait, what? When the nursing shift changes? Like, are you telling me that it's a personal choice that you don't want to take her in? Should I just wait for another nurse to let me know if she wants to take her in? I was so upset because my dog couldn't even hold her poop. Like blood was literally just leaking out of her. And I'm freaking out. This is my 10-year-old friend who was with me through good and bad. And I was watching her die, and people were not helping. People were turning us away. Out of desperation, I called her vet's office, and they told me that she urgently needed to be seen. And I told her how many hospitals were turning me away, and they told me to go to a specific one. So I did. Thank God they took her in. Two hours after dropping her off, her heart stopped. Luckily, they were able to perform CPR on her, and they brought her back. They were trying to do all kinds of blood work on her, and they didn't know what was wrong with her. She was very weak, very cold. I couldn't sleep the next day. I was worried. Second day. And this was New Year's Day. 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning. I got a call from the vet. And they said her heart had stopped again. And while they were on the phone with me, the doctor was trying to bring her back. And he finally did. And he talked to my husband and myself, and he said, she's very sick. She's not gonna make it very long. We're doing everything we can, but her body's not holding onto the sugar that we're giving her through the IV. And then he just gave us the option of putting her down. The first time he suggested it, I was hesitant because I did not want to give up on her, but I wanted to do everything we possibly could to help her. But after the second time that her heart stopped, it was like her little body telling me that she couldn't do it anymore. And I couldn't put her through that torture. So I had to let her go. So my husband and I drove to the hospital. And I held her in my arms. And they let her go. So COVID has impacted my life in many ways. It separated our family for 2-3 weeks. We didn't have holiday. We didn't have Christmas. We didn't have New Year's. My daughter went through the situation that she went through. Had a seizure. Went to the hospital. And I lost my best friend. I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care what anyone says. I've been hearing people say, well, luckily it wasn't a family member. Luckily it wasn't one of you guys. Yeah, thank God it wasn't one of my kids. Thank God it wasn't my husband or myself. But I still saw her as a family member. I still saw her as one of my kids. So it still hurt me to lose her. So it felt just the same if I would have lost a family member. I wanted to change my environment. I just wanted to be somewhere else. I couldn't be within these four walls anymore. It was just a constant reminder of the pain and the trauma we all went through. So I had to go back. I needed to go back to work, just to be busy and to get things, just to distract myself from everything that had happened. They told me that after 14 days of being infected or even testing positive for COVID, I was no longer contagious. They said that I didn't have a live virus. So even though I would have symptoms, I wasn't contagious, so I couldn't pass it on to anyone else. So going back to work literally changed everything that I do. I mean, aside from doing all the proper, precautions, taking all the proper precautions and using the proper PPE, goggles, face mask, hand sanitizer, frequent hand washing, like I went back to work super paranoid, and I was still having symptoms. I was dizzy. I was dizzy a lot of the time, most of the time, I would say, and it made it hard. It made it hard to work because it's a very fast-paced environment, working where I work. So having to stand up so suddenly, walk to one area and then walk back and do this and do that, it only made my dizziness worse. I still had nausea, so if I had breakfast that morning, I was nauseous all day. I had headaches. I still had headaches. So I got tired of taking medication every single day. I'm thinking, what am I doing to my liver at this point? There were times where I would still feel chills. I would still feel muscle aches, my hands would hurt. And then sometimes it felt like my bones were hurting. I don't even know if that's a thing, but it literally felt like my bones were hurting. And then I don't know what happened. Just as I thought I was recovering, I got sick again. Probably with the cold. I don't think it was the flu, but it was probably the cold. I started to feel again weakness, some body aches, and I just felt really warm inside. I felt hot. I felt you could tell I had an infection. When you start to feel like you're getting sick, you feel it, and that's literally how I felt. I just felt like I was drained of my energy. I wasn't having it, but I was pushing myself because I didn't want to be home again. I didn't want the constant reminder of what had happened. I felt like if I was home, I would jinx the situation and more bad events will snowball after that, and I just wanted to avoid that completely. So I did not want to stay home. I just wanted to stay out of the house as much as possible. So I still went to work, And you know, because I was still experiencing some symptoms due to COVID, and my work had cleared me and my doctor had cleared me, the fact that I was still experiencing these symptoms, they considered it still, you know, COVID symptoms that were still prolonging. So they not at one point thought that I had to isolate myself because I was experiencing new symptoms. Because technically the symptoms I was starting to feel all over again, I had been feeling before, if that makes sense. So guys, COVID is awful. It's an awful thing to go through. My advice to everyone, if you have not caught COVID, trust me, it's not a good thing to go through. And I know that right now with COVID, like, restrictions are pretty bad. So there could be times where you haven't seen family members for a long time since the pandemic started. You haven't gone to school, you probably haven't had any human-on-human interaction. You know, you're limiting yourself to maybe just the grocery store, doctor's office, or what have you. But guys, you know, my advice is try not to, you know, continue to wear your masks. I mean, it could, some people think they don't work, some people say they do. I mean, I really don't know what's true, what's not true. But if taking an extra step to keep you from getting infected or possibly infecting someone else, what's the harm in wearing a mask? What's the harm in wearing a face shield? What's the harm in using hand sanitizer? You know, just do what it takes to take care of each other. You know, social distancing, you know, just, I mean, the things that I went through, guys, I've heard of people that had no symptoms. I've had family members that had COVID and they had either mild symptoms, like mild headache, or just a little cough, or some people didn't feel anything at all and they tested positive for COVID. But unfortunately, our family were one of those people that got affected very bad, very severely, and all these horrible events came out of it. And I wouldn't want to wish any of this onto anyone. So it's scary for a healthcare worker because you're working with patients. In some areas you work with like high-risk patients. So I work with pregnant patients, I work with elderly patients, and some of those patients have some underlying health issues that can be severely affected by COVID if no one's careful. So it can be scary. It can be scary being a healthcare worker, having tested positive for COVID and thinking, you know, you could pass it on. But luckily I was cleared and I was told that I'm no longer contagious. But either way, I still took proper precaution. I made sure that I used hand sanitizer before contacting any patient. I used my my PPE, so my goggles and my face mask, and I made sure I maintained a safe distance unless I needed to like draw blood or anything else aside from that. So hopefully this video was helpful, educational for all of you. Once again, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for all the support you guys have provided for me. Thank you to all the new subscribers I have gained. If you guys haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to the video. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a like. Share this video with everyone and anyone, because I'm sure that anything in this video would benefit everyone. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you or anyone you know has been affected by COVID. You know, hopefully nothing severe has happened to any of you guys, and hopefully we get out of this pandemic soon, because it's a true nightmare for a lot of people. So let's stay positive. Let's spread positive vibes. Let's be hopeful that we will get out of this soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys at my next video.